Hey y'all, Weedle here. For all my friends out there and my social media friends, Facebook friends, my acquaintances, and whatever, a little bit of what I've been up to from last fall through the winter to date here. Things that I've had cooking. You all know I usually got something cooking. Um, so you all know that 3 years ago I got bit by a tick and contracted alpha gal syndrome. Alpha gal syndrome, in a quick rundown, they call it the red meat allergy, but it's much, much more than that. Um, Anything mammal byproducts, I can't touch anymore. I can't eat. So beef, lamb, squirrel, rabbit, deer, elk, you name it, I can't eat it. Only thing I can eat, fins or feathers. If it swims or flies, I can eat it, but I cannot eat no mammal. Um, so alpha-gal syndrome affects, 500,000 people in the U.S. That's what they say, anyways. 500,000 people. I guarantee, I bet it's double. But at any rate, I've had I've had somebody really, really help me when I contracted this learn how to live, learn how to control it, learn how to eat healthy, and take and control my allergy. Right. I wanted to do something to pay this forward. So there's a few things I've had cooking for a while. I've had it rolling, and I haven't shared it with all my peoples. I haven't shared none of this on social media or nothing like that. So two things. The first one is I had this bright idea. I'm going to start me a podcast. Uh, um, I have done that. I have done that. My first episode dropped on January the 1st. I'm doing an episode every 2 weeks where I interview and talk to people with Alpha Gal that are outdoorsmen. The podcast name is called Alpha Gal Outdoorsman. Um, if you're watching this on social media, I've shared this through YouTube. I got a YouTube channel. I'm not going to put a lot of time into that YouTube. You can look at the videos that are on there. I've shot them with my phone. I'm not going to put a lot of time into that. That YouTube channel is simply to promote the podcast or to help it along. Um, but I will have the podcast episodes uploaded onto the YouTube channel, which also is Alpha Gal Outdoorsman. So, with that being said, the other thing that I've done is um, I think it was October, but I don't remember the month. It could have been late September, October. I know that I don't think it was November. I listened to a webinar with the chairman from Alpha Gal Alliance from Washington, D.C. They're trying to get all 50 states mandatory reporting, a mandatory reportable disease in each state with the CDC. Um, I listened to this podcast and they said, call your representative, get the ball rolling in your state. Let your representatives know you're out there. Well, I got off that podcast or that webinar, and I'm like, what the heck? I know my representative. We all know Rodney Creech. We all know him. I made a phone call. I'm like, hey, man, listen, I got this disease. I got bit by a tick. And just like everybody else, he'd never heard of before. But he heard me out. He said, give me about 10 minutes. I'll call you back. So he calls me back with the phone number to the chairman of the Ohio Department of Health. He said, call her tomorrow morning between 8 and 9. So I spent the whole evening um, preparing for this phone call to try to sell her on this. I'm like, well, I started getting the idea like, what have I got myself into here, right? So I prepared for this. I called her the next morning between 8 and 9. And let me tell you something. It was easy. I was prepared for this big, long, I'm going to explain everything. It was the easiest phone call it could have been. She had already done the research. She already knew the answers to most of the questions she had. Um, so I called her the next morning. She was on board. This phone call happened on a Tuesday, and by the next Wednesday, the bill was written to make alpha gal a mandatory reportable disease. So if you go to the doctor or you go to the allergist, and you get diagnosed with alpha gal syndrome, they have to report that to the CDC. And the reason we want this to happen is because there's no funding, there's no education for doctors, there's no raising awareness, there's none of that happening right now. But until we get this reported, when we get this a reportable disease and we see what the numbers are, then we can start getting funding or grants to make this happen. Okay, so I made that phone call. It became bill, or it became a bill. I went to the State House at the Capitol building. I do have a video on that. Whenever it was, I don't even remember now, last November or whatever, for the first reading, where the sponsors, which is Congressman Creech and Chairman of the Health Committee, Gene Schmidt. They read the bill. It was approved as a bill. Um, so now, fast forward to today, which is February the 4th, was witness testimony. So today, I drove back to the Capitol building. I stood in front of Congress and I gave my testimony on why this should be bill. Um, so what I'm getting at is I'm just letting everybody know the things that I have been up to this winter. Um, One was starting the podcast, preparing for the podcast, Alpha Gal Outdoorsman, and two was to help push this bill into law. Today, I went to Congress and we done that. So I'm going to play you all the clip. I'm going to drop it in here right now. But when I do that, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to drop my intro to the podcast. I'm going to put it in front of it. I'm going to play you the clip of me testifying, and then I'm going to play you. You know what? I'll save the outro until after I come back on and talk to you, after you watch the clip. So stick around here, watch the clip of me testifying in Congress. I say a lot, and my wife gets on me. She said, if you do your podcast, you can't say all the time. Well, sometimes I don't know what else to say. So I say a lot. But we got their attention. There was two other people that testified live today. I'm only going to show mine because I haven't got out and got permission from them other two people, but they was outstanding as well. So with no further ado, welcome to this episode of Alpha Gal Outdoorsman. Welcome to the Alpha Gal Outdoorsman podcast, where we talk all things Alpha Gal and all things outdoors. Everything from hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, canoeing, kayaking, jeeping, off-roading, even gardening. I'm your host, Robert Worley.
The substitute bill for House Bill 578. This substitute bill is the result of conversations we had with the Department of Health. It keeps the intended goal of requiring alpha-gal syndrome as a designation while eliminating outdated disease references. It also provides broader categories for the Director of Health to use in determining which other diseases and illnesses should be reported. A comparison doc was sent to the members and is available. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the amendment is accepted. Now, I will ask if there are any witnesses for this bill. Is Robert Worley here? Would you please step forward? Welcome, Robert. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. Thank you all very much for being here and hearing us today. I appreciate everything you guys do. So my name is Robert Worley. I'm here in support of Bill 578. Before I get too far into Alpha Gal, the bill, and tell you a little about myself. I'm 55. I've been an avid outdoorsman my entire life. I got bit by the tick in June. I started having reactions in July, and then I had to self-diagnose in late August. When I went to the doctor had no idea how to treat this allergy. He, and I quote, he said, if it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it must be a duck, so stop eating cheeseburgers. He had no idea the extent of this allergy. For example, Aquafina water and Dasani water are both filtered through bone char. So if an alpha gal patient drinks one of them, they have a reaction. Advil liquid gels. The gel in the Advil liquid gels is made with a mammal byproduct as well. Kids, for instance, if they have gummy bears are made out of a mammal byproduct. And that's just a few examples. This is not just a red meat allergy. I didn't learn how to control my allergy until I was reunited with an old friend of mine that had been fighting alpha-gal syndrome for a few more years longer than me. She taught me how to control my allergy through healthy eating, She helped me. I credit her for saving my life. But not everybody's got an alpha-gal mentor like I was fortunate enough to have. I'm asking you all to pass Bill 578, because if we're not tracking how bad this situation is, I mean, how do we know? How can we battle it? Early detection and clinical awareness would just strengthen with this bill. As of 2025, 10 additional states has added alpha-gal syndrome for mandatory reporting. 2 of them states being our neighbors, West Virginia and Kentucky. And I can tell you from personal experience that we are light years behind Kentucky. I can walk into a restaurant down in Kentucky and tell them I have alpha-gal syndrome or the red meat allergy, and they know just how to prepare my meal, or they say they can't take care of me, which I appreciate. Walk into a restaurant in Ohio, they look at me like I had 2 heads if I say that. And I know what a lot of people are thinking is it's just not that bad in Ohio. Well, it's not yet. It's moving from the south to the north. The Lone Star tick is migrating, and it's migrating fast. And as you're aware, it comes from a tick bite, so that makes it a vector-borne illness. The EPA, the Department of Health, give more than $650,000 a year just for mosquito control. So how can we ever get to the point of protecting Ohio citizens if we don't have the awareness? We need the numbers. We need to know how bad this is. West Virginia and Kentucky are hot spots, and we're next. We are definitely, it's already, you can see it in the southern part of the state. It's coming, and if you look at the maps, it's just continuing to grow. I'd like to ask you to approve Bill 578 for mandatory reporting. Let's save some lives. Let's protect Ohio citizens and approve it. I'd like to thank you all very much for your time today.
Thank you for your testimony. And before I open it up for questions, you and I talked briefly earlier. I was on the plane a couple of weeks ago, and a gentleman was there, and he said he had alpha-gal syndrome, and I went, really? Where did you get the tick bite? And he said, well, I'm assuming I got it here. And so that's in the greater Cincinnati area. It is spreading from when we talked before. Having said that, are there any questions?
I just have one.
Yes, Dr. Samani?
I'm just curious, when was when was this syndrome or disease, alpha-gal syndrome, identified by physicians or by the scientific community? Because I know it's fairly new.
Yes, through the chair to the representative. There's a big blur when it comes to how long it's been here and whatnot. Okay, so there's patients out there within the U.S., Arkansas, and places like that has had patients. It's been 20 years and they just didn't know what it was. The official, I guess you could call it the official, this is what this is, came in 2009. I can't remember, but some of my other folks will probably be able to answer this question a little better, who actually discovered it. But 2009 is when they said, okay, alpha-gal syndrome is this, and it comes from a tick bite, and that was in 2009. However, it has been here lots of years before they put a name to it and put where it comes from.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And a reminder to the committee, we will have the Director of Health in, I believe, the 25th? Not confirmed, and we can really ask him some of these really interesting questions. Are there any other questions of this witness? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention. I will now.
Well, there you have it. That's what it looks like when you put a hillbilly in front of Congress. It says all the time. I will make a little fun of myself there. So when I went in and sat down, you see the camera angle, how it's angled just a little bit. You can see the people sitting in the rows. I was sitting right behind that person. So when the people was on before me talking about another bill, I was sitting there all kind of like this. And my wife looked at that and started chuckling. She said, you look just like Forrest Gump. So, and I watched it and laughed, and I was just like Forrest Gump for sure. So, So anyway, that's what you get when you put a hillbilly in Congress right there. It looks very positive for the bill. It looks like it's going to go through Congress fine. Then it's got to go to the Senate. We'll be back up there probably in a month or so. They say it's moving fast. We'll have to testify again in front of Senate and try to get it passed on both sides. But it's looking very positive. Hopefully, sometime in 2026, alpha gal syndrome will be a mandatory reportable disease in the state of Ohio. Um, One thing I want to say about the podcast is I wanted to make this simple when I made it. So editing wasn't top of the top thing for me. I'm not a good editor, obviously. I'm barely knowing how to work this computer as it is. Um, so some of the podcasts, the internet, while I'm on, because I do it through Zoom with my guests, because some of them are out of state or wherever they're at, and there's some buffering stuff that's going on. I've realized that I got to figure out how to edit and cut these spots out. So give me some time. They're going to get better. The guests that are on are great. Lori's been great. Um, William Winford, the rock climber, man, what this guy's got so many adventures, but there is a spot or two where it buffers a minute. The next podcast is supposed to come out on February the 15th. Josh, there was a couple internet drop spots in the middle. I'm hoping to have them worked out. I haven't put that episode all the way together yet. So, Bobby V, if you are listening to this, you're about to get a phone call. The editing ninja, the only editing ninja that I know. So, go to the podcast. It's called Alpha Gal Outdoorsman. Give it a listen. Check it out. Hit that subscribe button or follow button or whatever the heck it is that you do with podcasts now these days. Give us a listen. It's actually doing pretty good. It's doing better than I expected. The I went through a Buzzsprout, I think it was, and they give you these parameters on starting a new podcast, how you should do, and we've way exceeded that. But I'm not surprised, to be honest, because there is nothing out there for alpha gal, for people with alpha gal. Um, and you know, there's lots of Facebook stuff, but I found very little podcast out there like this. There's the two alpha gals who I really hope soon will I can get on. There's the alpha gal grief girl who will be on our next one of our next two episodes. She'll be on, so give it a listen. Alpha gal outdoorsman, wherever you get your podcast. Hit the YouTube like button, but listen, the YouTube channel, you might see some videos of me just cooking somewhere. They're not going to be the best. They're going to be recorded on my phone. I'm not going to put a lot of time in the YouTube channel. But give the podcast a listen, give us a follow, give the YouTube a follow. You'll be able to keep up a little better. And here, I'm going to punch in the outro right now for Alpha Gal Outdoorsman. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to Alpha Gal Outdoorsman. Make sure to hit that follow button. And until we meet again, wear your tick repellent.